Hi, it's Charlie Minato from halfwheel.com, and in front of me are the two new ashtrays from MONAD Lam. And if you're thinking to yourself, I've never heard of that company, not entirely surprising. It is a company based in France that up until late last year was only making cigar knives, which aren't exactly the most popular products in the world, although I think if more people knew about them, maybe they'd be interested in them. But the cigar knives aren't exactly the cheapest thing. They're starting to get more affordable, and you can't bring them on planes. So at some point, I imagine MONAD Lam realized they needed to sell some products that were able to be used by a wider set of people, and so they came up with these two new ashtrays. So this is the DYAD. This is the 2 cigar model. This is the MONAD. It is the single cigar model. They are more or less the same thing. As you can see, aesthetically, obviously outside the colors, they're offered in the same 5 colors for the record. The one difference is there's this little slot here on the MONAD, whereas the DYAD is the sort of rounded square look. They're both made of the same material, which is mortar. I'll get to that in a second. This is priced at $68, or I guess it's 68 euros, and then this one is $78 and 78 euros. I understand the conversions don't entirely make sense there, but a lot of companies do this where they'll price the accessories the same as they will in dollars as euros. Not my business, so it is what it is. It's 5 3/4 inches from here to here, as well as from here to here. On the MONAD, obviously with that little slot there where the cigar goes, it's a little bit shorter on those ends, but it's, I guess, less than 6 inches each way is the easiest way to think about it. And then in terms of height, it's 1 3/10 inches, so a little bit less than 1 1/3 inches. Like I said, they're made of mortar, and so that's a material that is a mixture of different things. It's similar in a way to concrete, but it's not concrete. It's got a smooth texture. It kind of reminds me of clay. It's not super smooth like, say, a glass would be or a porcelain, but it's not super rough. I imagine they could make it feel rougher if they wanted to, but in this particular instance, it's pretty nice to feel. It's got some little imperfections in the ashtray that you can see. I'll sort of move this around. And these are intentional, or maybe intentional is not the right word, but they're not trying to get rid of them. And the idea here is the company says they're embracing the Japanese aesthetic of wabi-sabi, which is very, very different than wasabi. Wabi-sabi is this idea that you should embrace the imperfections, find beauty in the imperfections, or at least that's what a class I took about Japanese culture in college suggested, or at least one of the classes. And so the idea here is these little bubbles. There's also some discoloration marks throughout the ashtray. A, they make every ashtray different. B, if you sort of can focus and embrace them, you can find beauty in them. So that's interesting. There also, as you can see, is felt on the bottom. The most interesting thing to me when these ashtrays were announced, though, beyond the idea that MONAD Lam, who had previously only been making cigar knives, was going to make ashtrays, was the idea that they said that over time, the ashtray is going to discolor slightly with use, which isn't terribly surprising, and good on them for suggesting that was going to happen. A lot of companies wouldn't say so, but that you could remove it, and it's something I haven't tested yet. But if you look right here, so right at the bottom-ish, right where the sort of last part of the cigar would go before it falls into the ashtray, you can see a gray line right there. That's likely coming from the heat of the cigar. I've been using this ashtray pretty extensively for about the last 2 months, and so there has been some of that discoloration. What's interesting, though, is the company says that if you want to, you can sort of scrub that away. I have not tested that yet because I needed to shoot this video, but I will update the text review and let you guys know how that works out, because I'm somewhat curious to do it. So if you like the patina effect, you can not clean it or not scrub that out vigorously and keep the patina, or you can clean it vigorously every time, I guess, and it won't patina. I've just been wiping this down with like one of the prepackaged wipe things. That's how we use it. So after every use, it gets wiped down. The only place I've noticed the discoloration is in that middle part. I haven't noticed any in the actual bowl of the ashtray itself. Now, as far as whether or not it makes a quote-unquote good ashtray, I've tried to come up with some parameters through the course of these ashtray reviews, which was something I never imagined I would be doing with my life, and I've got a few. So it starts with, do you like the way it looks? Like I said, offered in 5 colors. The blue was the color that I was kind of curious about beyond these two, but ultimately we went with these two, and that's entirely subjective. I would say if you're trying to not have it stand out, the black is great. It really blends in. I think it's technically anthracite. It's like a dark charcoal color. And I imagine this would look good or would blend in with just about any room. The green's a little bit more standoutish, but that's what we like here at Half Wheel. So that's entirely subjective. The second part is how easy is it to clean, which is really kind of the big factor here. And the good news with this ashtray is they've paid attention to that. So rather than having sharp corners, all of the corners of the ashtray are all rounded, and that includes the bottom of the ashtray. So it comes up to rather than coming to a straight 90-degree angle, there's a little bit of a rounding. That means when you go to clean it, it's a lot easier to wipe out the ashes that fall inside. So bravo to Leifin Lam there for getting that part down. The third part is, is it well made? And in this particular instance, yeah, they're pretty well made. They're made in Paris. They feel solid. Obviously, it's a sort of, think of it like a concrete or a clay. Like eventually, if you get high enough up and you drop it, it will break. Obviously, that I guess applies to everything, but it's probably not as durable as a melamine ashtray or a plastic ashtray would be. But that's the trade-off that you get for having a material like this. The one other thing I would say I really like about these ashtrays is how well they are able to utilize space. So this ashtray is a Davidoff porcelain ashtray. And to be quite honest, this is not that big of an ashtray compared to what I see in a lot of cigar shops, at least here in the U.S. So if you look at it, you will note that the Leifin Lam is not that, it's smaller. It's certainly shorter. It's a little bit thinner, but mainly it's the height difference there. It's a little over an inch in terms of the height difference. And that may not seem like a massive difference in terms of the grand scheme of things, but if you're at a cigar shop, I think it actually does make a difference. And remember, this ashtray is not really that big for a lot of ashtrays compared to those big 4-person ashtrays. And I think that this ashtray highlighted something to me at least, which was those 4-person ashtrays are relatively useless in terms of trying to actually have 4 people use them, at least use them comfortably. You end up with a scenario where either the 4 people are so spread out, and obviously given the times that we're at, that's important in most countries, including the one that I'm in currently, or they're sitting on top of each other, in which case it's just kind of uncomfortable to all try to use the ashtray. In reality, having something like this, where 2 people are using it, works a lot better. I could put it right here, the person next to me could share it, or I could put it across the table, slightly out of frame, and, if you were sitting across from me, you and I could share it without it being too unreasonable. So I think in that particular instance, this ashtray works out very, very well. The other advantage for cigar shop owners, something that most people probably don't care about, but if you had a whole bunch of these, they stack up really nicely on top of one another because they're the same shape or basically the same shape. And you could actually stack, I guess, 9 of these on top of one another before you would get to a foot tall. So if you had to store these like in a drawer or something, they're super efficient in terms of space usage there. Now, only detractor is kind of the price. They are not the cheapest ashtray in the world. They're obviously not the most expensive ashtray we review here at Half Wheel. But, $70 for an ashtray is a decent bit of money, particularly considering I imagine most people are using ashtrays that either cost less than $30 or ashtrays that they got for free at an event or somehow. It's not cheap, but it's also not super expensive. And that's up to you about whether or not you think it's worth the money. I certainly don't think you're going to feel like you got robbed for $70. It is what it is. It looks exactly like it looks on the internet and in this video. It doesn't have any real surprise functionality, but there also aren't any bad surprises. So that is the Leifin Lam in the MONAD and the DYAD ashtrays. If you found this video on YouTube and have no idea what Half Wheel is, you can do the whole like, subscribe thing. We will appreciate it. But you will also note that we don't publish that often here on our YouTube channel. 10 months out of the year, we basically only use this thing to review accessories, but every day of the year, nearly every day of the year, we are publishing on our website, which is halfwheel.com. Most days of the week we review a cigar, and the other days of the week we are writing news stories about new cigar shipping, new cigar accessories, and other industry-related news. We also have the most comprehensive coverage of cigar-related legislation that you can find on the internet. So if you are unfamiliar with Halfwheel, I would check out halfwheel.com.